Hey everybody, it is Nathan Selove with another episode of Autism Actually Speaking. So this episode is a follow-up video on a video that I did a few weeks ago about autism self-diagnosis. In the video, I made the argument that self-diagnosis is a thing and it should not be completely disregarded. And what's interesting is that I got a lot of comments on that video from people that had just seen the title and had realized that it was going to be about self-diagnosis, and were worried that the video was going to be basically crapping on people that were self-diagnosed. Now, after they actually watched the video, they realized that I was actually making the exact opposite argument, but what's interesting is that the reason why they assumed that is because they had seen a lot of other autism advocates on YouTube basically making videos crapping on self-diagnosis. And when I saw that, I realized that my argument isn't complete. That video that I made was about empowering people that have turned to self-diagnosis because they lacked the resources to get a clinical diagnosis, and I really hope that it did empower them. But now, I want to talk directly to the people that stigmatize self-diagnosis, and hopefully try to convince you that you're doing more harm than good. I get it. Autism is a unique experience. There are unique struggles, unique challenges, and unique hurdles to jump over. And if you have a diagnosis, you have some kind of confirmation that your struggles are related to something that is outside of your control. And when you see someone else take upon that identity without that same confirmation, it can feel hurtful. And I get that, I do. However, one thing that you need to understand is that access to a diagnosis is a privilege. And there are many things that can impact it. And there are many things that can impact a person's ability to seek a diagnosis. There's research to suggest that there's a racial aspect to it. There are discrepancies among diagnosis in communities of color. Gender. There's research to suggest that gender discrepancies can often impede someone's ability to get a diagnosis. Socioeconomic status. Some people can't afford to see a therapist to get a diagnosis. Geographic location. Some people don't live anywhere near a therapist that knows enough about autism to diagnose them. Some people might avoid a diagnosis because they're worried that it might affect their job prospects. Some people might avoid a diagnosis because they're worried about healthcare coverage. Before the healthcare law changed, autism had been used as a pre-existing condition in order to deny coverage to people. And I have known people that were self-diagnosed that just were worried that the law might change back. Now, I am a major advocate for getting a diagnosis if you can. I've had my diagnosis since I was 9 years old, and it has really helped me throughout my life. It is the reason why I was able to get access to accommodations, my service dog, and I think that having a diagnosis is something that everyone should have access to. However, I also recognize that I got access to a diagnosis because I had access to a therapist that was able to diagnose me. And not everybody has that due to institutional barriers. And I think that if you're an autism advocate, you should be critiquing those institutional barriers, not demonizing the people that are victims of it. One of the major reasons why I do the "you might be autistic ifs" at the end of videos is, yes, so that we can laugh at ourselves, but also so that a person who is suspecting that they might be autistic can look at some of those and maybe they relate to some of them. And maybe that makes them do more research into autism because previously they didn't have access to a lot of that research. Getting my diagnosis did not magically make me autistic. And if you are someone that has struggled with sensory overload or social interactions or other things that are often associated with autism, and you've done your research and you've found yourself in a lot of the symptoms that are often associated with autism, then I do hope that at some point you do get access to a diagnosis, or at least an assessment. But until then, know that your experiences still matter. Well, that's today's video. Thank you all for watching. If you liked this episode, give it a like, a share, and if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel. Check out some of my other stuff. And in the meantime, if you have any questions or topics you'd like addressed, please leave them in the comments below, or message me on my Facebook, also linked below. And remember, if you think you're autistic, you might be autistic.